If you are eager for some Valheim tips and tricks, I've got you covered with 20 quick tips I've learned while playing over the last year and a half. The first is extremely basic, but even long-term players tend to avoid this, and that is sleeping through the night. In Valheim, the nights are dark and full of terrors, but really, more mobs and harder mobs are around at night, so where possible, sleep through the night. On servers, this requires all online players to jump in bed at the same time. Leading off from the former is to always stay rested. The rested buff in Valheim gives you 50% health regen, 100% stamina regen and 50% increased experience gain to skills. This is an absolute huge advantage and something you should work to keep up at all times. You can get the rested buff at minimum by sitting by a fire, or existing in range of a fire in a bed for 20 seconds. The amount of time the rested buff lasts is based on the comfort level of where you got it. You can build home comforts which will increase your comfort level, which gives an extra minute to the rested buff for each. These are things like your bed, a fire, a fine wood chair, table, rugs, banners and more. Not only should you keep yourself rested, but also fed. In Valheim you can eat or drink up to 3 things at once. Each of these food items will increase your health and stamina maximums. In the beginning you'll be relying on raspberries and mushrooms. Once you set up a fire and a cooking station you can cook boar meat, deer meat and neck meat. Later on you'll be able to cook multiple ingredients into higher value items that give increased stats. Each food item has a fork icon. These will be either red, yellow or white. Red means it is primarily health giving food, yellow means stamina and white means balance between the two. Talking of food, one of the most important early game foods is honey. You have access to it from the initial meadows areas, but it's not super obvious. When exploring the meadows, look out for shacks and little wooden watchtowers. These will sometimes have beehives in them. Be careful when approaching them as the bees will defend themselves. The best way to take a hive down and ensure you get a queen bee that you can later use to make your own honey producing hive is to build a workbench next to the shack and just destroy the part of the structure holding up the hive. The hive will then fall apart, dropping the queen bee and some honey. Bees are far from the only nice loot you'll find in the meadows. You will also see these boat graves dotted around. These graves mark buried loot. In order to dig up the loot you will need to have taken down the first boss to obtain a pickaxe. You will usually find 1 chest and 2 singular items. A chest will have items like gems, fire arrows and gold coins. The singular items can be any of these also and bones. You should store the gems and coins for later, they are quite useful as you go on, though in particular the silver necklace. These are a semi-rare item that can only be found in a few places. They are required to build the treasure chest later on that is a nice aesthetic build item. Bones are also in short supply until you move on from the meadows, and are required to craft and upgrade vital items like leather armour, the club weapon and more. In theme with the boat graves, a great place to find bones and occasional gems are these other burial structures. These are far easier to loot as the bones or gems will be on the ground directly under the raised cover stone. Another stone structure you'll randomly find in the meadows is a ring of large unbreakable stones. This serves no purpose anymore and should not be confused as a mark for loot. You won't find any buried there. Though as they are unbreakable, they are a great foundation for a starter base. You can use the stones to hold your breakable base parts above the ground away from pesky greylings. Over the span of your play you will do a lot of digging with a pickaxe, and there are certain techniques you can use to get the results you want, whether it be digging up items or terraforming for a build. One of the most useful things to know is that the pickaxe will take away ground horizontally to the exact level your pickaxe hits when digging. This might seem obvious, but when digging a trench, you may feel it necessary to get as close to the wall of the trench where you are expanding to swing. But you should actually swing from far enough away to hit the exact bottom of the wall. This will dig away ground around it at that lower level, instead of hitting higher where the ground taken will be from that height. It is also not worth it for your time to farm stone from digging ground. Talking of building bases, you will need a whole lot of wood, and I'd be surprised to hear of a long-term player that hasn't died to a tree before. As you fell a tree, the resulting log is super heavy and will sometimes fall toward you. Always be aware of where the tree is falling and move out of the way, as this can cause an immense amount of damage, easily enough to one-shot you early on. Death in Valheim can be pretty harsh. The punishment for it increases as you get your skills higher. This is because skills take more and more actions to increase, and death results in a 5% decrease of your skills, not including any progress you made toward the next level. This death penalty is a great aspect to the game. Upon death you will be transported to your last claimed bed, and if the bed does not exist, the spawning Forsaken circle in the centre of the map. You will be naked and all of your belongings you had took safely into a gravestone where you died. Be warned that anyone can access this gravestone and take what's inside. You'll have a 10-minute buff that will prevent you from losing any more skills if you die again. So having old armour and weapons to hand to go and reclaim your belongings is an important thing. Upon reclaiming your items and breaking the gravestone, you will gain a buff increasing your speed, resistances, carry weight and stamina drain for 50 seconds to get away from whatever killed you and regroup. To avoid death you will want armour, and the best first armour set to go for is leather. Leather requires deer hide, and deer can be a real pain to hunt in the beginning. They are very skittish and will flee at the sight or even smell of you. While the use of a bow makes this relatively easy, the initial crude bow is awful. Its aim at any real distance is a little too off, so I would recommend hunting deer with a stone axe. Stone axe is one of the first tools you will make, and it only requires a bit of wood and stone. You can then upgrade it with a level 2 workbench very early on, with just a bit more stone. Sneaking up behind a deer and hitting it with a level 2 stone axe will almost always one-shot it, giving you fairly easy deer hide and meat. Bows are great weapons, but can take a second to get used to. One of the first things you'll notice is that it will hit slightly to the left or where you aim. This is actually a really cool thing they added to the game for realism, but also a necessary thing to account for. Arrows will also drop over distance, so make sure that when you aim, you consider the distance and slight left leaning. One more quick bow tip is that when the bow is pulled with an arrow ready to fire, it will drain stamina to hold it. Arrows can also be pricey, even if due to their feather requirement, so if your enemy has moved out of your line of sight, you can put your bow down without firing an arrow by using the block key, which on mouse and keyboard is the right mouse button. When fighting enemies you will want all the advantage you can get, and something you will see often is enemies staggering. The stagger effect is caused in a few ways, one of them being to hit an enemy with overwhelming force, so just keep whacking it. Stagger is triggered when the enemy's hidden stagger bar fills. Different enemies have a different size stagger bar and weapons can affect it differently. This stagger bar will also drain over time, so hitting an enemy in quick succession will cause it to stagger more easily. When staggered, the enemy will take double damage. It's important to note that you can also be staggered. Another way to stagger is through parrying. Similar to Souls games, if you are using a buckler type shield and time a block to when your enemy hits you, you can parry them. This will instantly stagger, allowing you to hit with double damage. The initial round wooden shield is capable of parrying and is a really fantastic thing to craft early on. Be sure to practice on greylings where if you miss the parry and they hit you, it isn't so bad. The action of parrying will require some stamina, but it is less than blocking. Some mobs cannot be staggered, such as area bosses. You will hear the sound of a successful parry, but the boss will not stagger. Fighting in multiplayer with a group can be a lot of fun, but don't let your guard down. Enemies will hit harder for every other person there. This is based on how many of the players are within 200 meters of the target mob. They'll require more damage to defeat and will deal 4% more damage for every extra player in range. For large groups, a dedicated tank is advised to be able to soak all that damage. Raids are a thing. In the beginning, just after defeating the first boss, raids will be kind of terrifying, especially for solo player. A raid is where a horde of enemies balanced to your progression in the game will besiege your dwelling. If you have no defences like wooden stake walls or terrain walls and moats, you will be very vulnerable, so it's important to set these up, and even build small ledges with cover to be able to fire arrows at incoming mobs. The intensity of each raid changes as you progress, with a mixture of the type of mobs you've killed and the last boss you killed determining which mobs will raid you. Once you get a bit further in, you'll want to delve into some dungeons. These present a fantastic opportunity to stay rested and keep your super powerful buff. Dungeons have an entrance area, somewhat safe from the mobs inside. You can place a fire down here and sit next to it to reset or regain your rested buff, which you will certainly want when exploring the dungeon. Exploring is an essential part of Valheim. It's one of the three main draws, being building, combat and exploration. As you explore you will find all sorts of cool stuff and you can't always deal with it at that time, or maybe it's a renewable resource. Your map has you covered. You can put marks on your map and even name them. Personally I use the basic dot to mark renewable resources like raspberries and mushrooms. These will all grow back, and also shacks. I then use the hammer icon to mark consumable resources like oak trees, boat graves and copper deposits. Double clicking will place the marker, allowing you to type a name. Left clicking again will toggle a red cross on the marker for showing whether it is used up, and right clicking will remove it. A really good tip for using these is to select which marker you wish, then exit and re-enter the map to center your cursor exactly where you are, making your markers far more accurate. Finally, I would advise you never use a map generator to see what is in your world seed. This will definitely either ruin or degrade your experience by essentially removing the exploration aspect of Valheim. It can be incredibly tempting to go online and use a map generator to see the layout of zones, whether your seed has a maypole or a swamp that is particularly full of crypts, but it's just not worth it. On that note, I would also advise not sharing the seed of an ongoing world in general. I'd recommend one of these two videos next. The storage solution I came up with a while back still works and looks fantastic in any base. Have a fantastic day.